All right, welcome back to Bald Father Bets. We're here, college football week 1, Sunday, looking ahead to the USC LSU game tonight. Coming at you a bit early to do some expected line movement that's kind of already taking place and that we continue to see trends of in that game. It's the Modelo kickoff game in Las Vegas. It's the tradition of having the one standalone game on Sunday for college football on the Labor Day weekend before we move into the NFL, where the NFL will dominate on Sundays. Always looking forward to that, but it's fun in that first week to get that standalone Sunday game, which has produced some thrillers in the past, and then some dominant performances as well. But before we get to that, take some time to recap yesterday, games that we played, and then games also that we didn't play but could have an impact as we move forward into the season. So yesterday went 6-9 in terms of record with units, so not a positive day, not a killer either, bringing our overall record to 11-10 on the year, which if you're averaging a -10 juice in your plays, that's exactly dead even in terms of money. So right back to where we started. Look to see if we can build on that and move back into the positive like we were headed into yesterday. So starting out in the morning, the Clemson-Georgia game, domination from Georgia. The Clemson side did their best to hang in there in the first half. Clemson defense actually played pretty well. Georgia had a few misses, some uncharacteristic misses from Carson Beck, who is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in college football, especially in that system. That system kind of allows you to be quite accurate. You're throwing to a lot of wide open targets, and he actually missed on a few of those throws, so probably could have had even a bigger lead headed into halftime, but there were some miscues from the Georgia side. Early on, you could see what Clemson was trying to do offensively, but they really shot themselves in the foot several times. Penalties, missed throws, and at the end of the day, Cade Klubnik was very inaccurate. It appears he's had little to no improvement since last year, which was his first overall year in starting. A lot of people were expecting a step up from him. The Garrett Riley system had people open. He either missed them or didn't read them correctly, and then by the end of the game, Georgia's defense kind of figured out exactly what Clemson was trying to do and was able to dominate. The Georgia team offense, which I consider to be the best in the country this year, they were good. There's some things there to be desired that they're going to need to improve on moving forward into the rest of the year. Didn't necessarily run the ball the way that you expect from a Georgia team. They started to break off some runs in the second half after that Clemson defense got worn down. But then you could really see the play action being set up. The long drawn-out plays, which then allow you to have a wide receiver, a tight end wide open, they work to perfection as the Georgia offensive line held up against blitzes, held up against the Clemson defensive front, which is very good, and gave the quarterback time to make those throws. Carson Beck was virtually untouched in the game. He had all the time in the world to find his wide receivers, which he did very well. And then to really put the nail in the coffin, Malachi Starks made one of the best interceptions you'll see at the college football level. Played the ball exactly like a wide receiver would, got his head turned around, caught the ball at the highest point, and at that point you knew, okay, this game is over and Clemson's probably not going to make it into the end zone, which they did not do, scoring only 3 points. So not a good showing for Clemson, not a good showing for Dabo Swinney, about what we expected for dominance in terms of Georgia, but a loss there from us, and a big one in terms of 4 units. Again, we loved Clemson headed into yesterday with their overall team talent, but at the quarterback situation, if you can't hit open wide receivers, if you can't make the right reads, it's going to be difficult to not get blown out by Georgia when you are in Atlanta, which is a de facto home game for them, even though it's a neutral site. Also, in the morning slate, which ended up going into the afternoon slate due to the rain delay, we had Penn State and West Virginia. Game started out close. West Virginia was actually able to drive all the way into scoring territory, and then went for it on a 4th and 1 and did not get it. Interesting decision from Neil Brown. Had an opportunity to go up 3-0 early. 4th and 1s against Penn State, if you are the underdog team and do not have the superior play at line of scrimmage, are going to be difficult to get all year long, as they have one of the best rush defenses in college football. They had one of the best rush defenses in college football last year. They will continue to have one of the best rush defenses in college football this year. And you could kind of see as the game wore on, they put a stranglehold on the West Virginia team. I know there's a lot of people who are saying, okay, yeah, but the second half of that game, the home crowd was neutered because a lot of people left. I don't think it would have made much difference if you watch the Andy Kotelnicki offense was in full display for Penn State, a little bit different than what he did at Kansas, obviously without the ability to really run the ball. However, Drew Aller did run the ball when it needed to, picked up a lot of crucial third downs with his legs. Nothing that you would see out of Kansas with Daniels and Bean in the previous time in terms of designed runs, runs on 1st and 2nd down, but enough to move the ball on critical third downs and then getting scoring position where they were able to score, I believe, 33 points. It was a very positive 34 points. It was a very positive display for the Penn State offense. And James Franklin continues to be one of the best coaches ATS, especially as a favorite at Penn State, as a favorite against other power conference opponents. He's one of the best ATS coaches in his time. Actually, since 2005, which is really the time in which James Franklin got started. So he was at Vanderbilt, and now at Penn State. A lot of people don't know this, but James Franklin is the 3rd best coach ATS record-wise out of all of college football. Another thing a lot of people don't know is that number 2 is Mike Gundy, and we'll talk about that one here in just a second. But again, trend continues. If Penn State is the favorite in a game, they're playing against a Power 4 opponent, so it's not something where they're favored by 55 points. He is a kind of a walking ATM machine as they score late. I think last year, everyone knows, they scored very late when they could have taken a knee to cover against West Virginia. They had the infamous game where they had the backup quarterback take a fake knee and then throw a touchdown pass in order to cover late. So obviously it riles up the other coaching staff, but so far most of the teams in which are inferior to Penn State have not been able to do anything about it. So then we move into Oklahoma State versus South Dakota State. Again, Mike Gundy continued his trend of being one of the best coaches on the ATS record. He is 2nd best in all of college football since 2005. Oklahoma State looked bigger, stronger, faster. They were more dominant than South Dakota State. You could see where South Dakota State had a few things working, but by the end of the game, they couldn't keep up with the overall team speed of Oklahoma State. Alan Bowman looked good. He looked accurate, which is what they're going to need from him as they rely on their offensive line and that rushing attack. He doesn't really need to win them games throughout the year, but he does need to be accurate. And in the Big 12, you could really see a separation this weekend of 3 teams. Everyone said, oh, the Big 12, there's like 8 teams that can win it. I don't think so. I think you were looking at Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State, who are clearly above others. A lot of people will say Kansas is in there as well. I think they're in there right now. Let's see how the health, especially if Daniels, holds up. Because when you get to the 2 deep on Kansas's roster, they're not in the same league as Utah, Oklahoma State, or Kansas State. Utah and Oklahoma State also with very veteran quarterbacks in Bowman and Rising. And then Kansas State with what ultimately could end up being the most dynamic player in the Big 12 with Avery Johnson. They all looked very good to start off the season, and so did Kansas. But again, we'll see how their health holds up as the year goes on. So then we go into the afternoon slate. We were looking at Miami and Florida, and then we were also looking at the Texas-Colorado State game. So Miami with a complete dominating performance over Florida. Fans in the stands were chanting "Fire Billy Napier" by the third quarter of that game. I think that's a little much. We talked about yesterday how Miami was going to surprise people with their physicality on the offensive and defensive lines. Yes, Cam Ward was amazing. Cam Ward is your Heisman favorite after week one. He looked like an NFL quarterback. Some of the throws he made, especially after scrambling around and then getting to a place where he could make a throw and then delivering complete darts outside of the one interception that he threw. But what really was the difference maker was the physicality of the offense and defensive line that Miami had. And yes, there's some transfer portal key additions there, but for the most part, that's Mario Cristobal's specialty. And a lot of that is now he's in year 3 of his system. His recruits are in, and you can see where they have some physicality that is going to be difficult to deal with. It's very similar to his time in Oregon, especially when he went into the Horseshoe and beat Ohio State as a 14-point underdog. They were more physical than Ohio State that day, and they were much more physical than Florida yesterday. Graham Mertz got injured towards the end of the game, and DJ Lagway did come in and lead them down for a touchdown. He was the number 1 dual threat quarterback recruit in the country coming into the year. It'll be interesting to see what Florida does there, because their offense did look more dynamic when he was in. It was clear his rushing ability is far superior to anyone else that they have on the roster to play quarterback. And Graham Mertz, without a clean pocket, was essentially useless yesterday, and Miami did not give him a clean pocket to throw from hardly at any point. We are not big future bettors here at Bald Father. I think a lot of times if you make a futures bet, it clouds your judgment as you move forward because you want that bet to hit, and so then you start to look at each individual week through the lens of the futures bets that you've made. So we, in general, tend to stay away from that. However, if you are someone looking at the ACC and you still see a path there for Florida State or Clemson to win the conference, now is your time. Florida State and Clemson, both 0-1, both coming off very disappointing performances in their opening week, and Miami looked utterly dominant. Now is not the time to place a futures bet on Miami. That would have been before heading into this week. But if you like Florida State or you like Clemson in the conference, now is your time, because you're going to get one of the better prices that you will probably be able to get on them all season while they're still in contention to win. So then we had Texas and Colorado State. Texas won 52-0, easily covering the number no matter what you got it at, 33, 33.5, 34-35. There was really at no point in which that game was in doubt. It was clear to see, though, that they do not have the same dominant run defense in just playing a base defense. The front 4 defensive linemen were not getting the stops in the backfield on the run game that they had when they had Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy up the middle, to where they could pretty much play a base defense, and it was impossible for another team to run on Texas. However, the overall running defense with the linebacker play, especially from Anthony Hill and David Benda, was superior to what it was last year. So I think there's a chance that Texas still is one of the top teams in terms of rush defense. It's just going to be from a different style. However, when they play a run defense with a style that requires the linebackers to come in off the second level, get into the backfield, and make a stop, that's going to leave you a bit susceptible to a play action pass. So the secondary held up very well yesterday, but we will see how that secondary holds up as the year goes on. Colorado State does have a good passing offense, but it is Colorado State. We're not talking about an elite team here. We're not talking about a team with elite weapons outside of the one wide receiver that Colorado State has, which is NFL ready. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, and I'll talk a little bit in terms of the preview for that next week after we talk about the Michigan-Fresno State game. So that was it on the morning and afternoon slate, where we were at an abysmal and absolutely horrible record at that point. Then heading into the night, we were sitting at a 1-9, and so then we came into the night where we were looking at Notre Dame, Texas A&M. We had Notre Dame plus the 3 for 4 units. And then we also had Fresno State plus the 21 for a unit. And that's where we were able to kind of stop the bleeding and get ourselves to a respectable record on the first Saturday. First, talk about Notre Dame and Texas A&M. A lot of people said, "Oh, it's kind of a sluggish game, not fun to watch." I thought it was a great game to watch. We enjoyed the defensive play. The defensive line play, especially between the two teams, was pretty dominant. And then as the game went on, Notre Dame's offensive line started to get a bit more comfortable, and they started breaking off some serious runs late in the third and into the fourth quarter. Riley Leonard also was a difference maker. Game was close. When the game is close, he's very good at making the play that needs to be made, converting third downs, whether it be with his legs or the accuracy of his arm. And then you could see that the Notre Dame offensive line kind of had something to prove, given all the question marks and all the points that have been raised by analysts throughout the offseason, and all the question marks that were made about their freshman left tackle, who has all the talent in the world. I think he's going to be very good. Made a few mistakes last night, had a few penalties, but outside of that, he played very well. And that Texas A&M defensive line is one of the best, if not the best, that they will face all season. If you had Notre Dame in the playoff, if you made a Notre Dame playoff bet heading into the year, you're looking quite good, as that's most likely going to be the most difficult game they played. It was on the road at night at Kyle Field, which brings us to our other point. Home field advantage yesterday for the three big games which had it, essentially useless. You had West Virginia, and again, I know West Virginia fans are saying that, okay, the rain delay led to essentially neutering that crowd by the second half. It was 20-6 at halftime, so I don't think home field advantage was going to be the key difference there in the second half. Florida completely taken out of it. Like I said, you could feel the energy. Had Tim Tebow there. You could feel the chants, the 1-bit, 2-bit. Everyone was hyped for that game. Everyone was there ready to, trust Billy Napier. Hey, we got to give him time. He's got his guys now. He's got his system now, and they have a capability to move forward. But again, Miami completely demolished them on the offense and defensive line, and that crowd was completely taken out of it. And then in the night game, it was a little bit more intense. That Kyle Field was absolutely electric. That game was very much in hand late, completely toss-up up until late in the fourth quarter. But the Notre Dame rushing attack took the fans out of it late, and home field advantage did not prove to matter much by the end of that game. Mike Elko's first game at Texas A&M, Tickle Me Elko, got off to a rough start, and continue to really be happy for Marcus Freeman, who I think is one of the best people in the industry. Young coach, had a lot of question marks replacing Brian Kelly, who's very established, but he's done, I think, an outstanding job so far in his first years there. Really happy for Riley Leonard, especially after the gruesome leg injury he had last year. Very cool that he got to go up and beat his coach from last year. Usually the quarterback versus ex-coach leans in favor of the ex-coach, especially if it's a defensive coach, because it's not like Riley Leonard, I know how Mike Elko coaches, so I know what to attack. It's more that Mike Elko knows how Riley Leonard plays, knows what he likes, knows what he doesn't, and can throw those things at him on defense, which he did. Frustrated him very much early on, but then again, as the game went on, it wasn't really about system versus system. It was about which team was more tired, which team was more physical, and Notre Dame's offensive line was able to prevail. So then last we have Michigan and Fresno State. Slop fest, ugly game, which was what we expected. That's why we were on Fresno State plus the 21. We got the win there, and that's what brought our record to 6-9. A very surprising move from Michigan, starting Warren at quarterback. He is a walk-on quarterback. Anytime a top 10 team, which Michigan is ranked number 9, I believe, starts a walk-on quarterback, that is reason for concern. And I was very surprised for it initially. I thought Alex Orji would at least get the first crack at it. He did come in through the opening touchdown pass for Michigan after they were able to get a turnover. But later in the game, he came in and he started throwing some passes that were more than 3, 4, or 5 yards, and you could start to see why he did not get the starting job. I believe he would potentially be an under 50% completion percentage passer, which is not what you can have in a Michigan offense. Michigan system, you have to be accurate because a lot of those passes are going to take place on 3rd and 5 and less, and that's what J.J. McCarthy was absolutely lethal at. Michigan was one of the best teams at converting 3rd down last year. Not the best. The best was Georgia, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that their average 3rd down yards to gain was 5.7, which was also the best in the country. And there's going to be a direct correlation between the amount of yards you have to gain and whether or not you are good at converting 3rd downs. But Michigan was also one of the best teams at converting 3rd downs, and it had to do with the fact that they were in short yardage situations, and J.J. McCarthy was very accurate. I do believe that you did not see all of the Michigan playbook yesterday. I think they kept it very, very basic. I think there's some play action stuff that you will start to see develop off of their run game that they will throw at Texas next week that will open up their playbook a little bit more, and they will be a bit more dynamic. But there was some concern for sure on the quarterback and the offensive side from Michigan. Game broke open late when Will Johnson, who showed everyone why he is quite possibly the best player in all of college football, returned a interception almost 100 yards. Read the play as perfect as you'll see anyone read the play, and then ran it back for a touchdown, which ultimately gave Michigan the 30-10 win, but still allowed Fresno State to cover the 21. Got a little scary for us there late, especially with the thought that Fresno State might turn it over again when they had the ball back with about 3:50 left in the game. Defensively, Michigan looked dominant. Their front looked dominant. They did look a little gettable in the secondary, which would be a concern heading into next week against Texas, because you could see while Texas won 52-0, they did not really attempt a downfield pass, which again, that's Texas holding their playbook back a little bit as they go into the Michigan game, not wanting to show everything on film. We can promise you Texas will attempt a downfield pass, not just the short little dink and dunks when they play Michigan. Texas's speed was elite. They looked like the fastest team in the country, which is what a lot of people have billed them as coming into the year. And outside of Will Johnson, Michigan's secondary did look a little gettable. So that line on the Michigan-Texas game went from 3.5 heading into the week, and it now sits at 5. If you want to play Texas, you should get it early, because it is only going to move further in the direction of Texas. If you want to play Michigan, which if that line gets all the way up to Michigan +7, it's going to be quite difficult not to play that, given that game seems like a 1st to 21, 1st to 24, 1st to 28 wins the game. If you want to play Michigan, then you should wait. The public and I think even sharps are going to be all over Texas coming in, because it seems like there's a very much mismatch there. However, I think that Michigan defensive line is dominant. I think they will open things up a little bit more on the offensive side. I think the running game will get going a little bit more. They were replacing almost all of their offensive line starters. And you'll see a little bit of a different Michigan in week 2 than you did in the first week. So no pick yet on that game, but just kind of based on whichever way you are leaning, and if you're certain on which way you're going to bet. If you're going to bet Texas, do it early. If you're going to bet Michigan, hold off a little bit. But we'll have a preview for that one as we get into next week. So that's pretty much it on the recap for the day. It was a great day. A lot of the big games that were supposed to be close weren't, but then you got that nightcap with Notre Dame, Texas A&M. Notre Dame winning 23-13, but it was close. It was 13-13 late in the fourth quarter. The game stayed close. It was a tight game. Excellent defensive line play. Not great wide receiver play, but still a fun game to watch. So now we come into tonight, LSU and USC. So the big talking point is that these teams are mirror images of each other. Yes and no. We'll start with the yes. So both teams are replacing a Heisman Trophy quarterback. Caleb Williams 2 years ago for USC, Jaden Daniels last year for LSU. Both teams have new defensive coordinators, new defensive staff, after having some of the worst defensive staff in college football last year. And then both teams have head coaches which are not really on the hot seat, you wouldn't say, but if things don't go well this year, then you're going to start to get talk about it next year. LSU fans, very passionate fan base. They would never admit it publicly, but there are some questions about Brian Kelly. USC, not the most passionate fan base right now. Not a lot of interest in college football out in the LA area, but there's some questions about Lincoln Riley, given how much money he was given the contract that he had, about, okay, is he the right guy to carry us into the Big Ten, where we're going to be facing some pretty powerhouse, smash mouth football teams, and we run a little bit more of a finesse system. So, and then where they are not similar. LSU lost their offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock. He's now at Notre Dame. You saw his offensive system last night, especially in the fourth quarter, kind of settle in and really break off some big plays against Texas A&M. Now with USC, their head coach is their offensive play caller. They did not lose their offensive system, their offensive play caller. It's the same one coming in. Miller Moss has been a part of that team since before Lincoln Riley got there. He's actually a Clay Helton recruit. A lot of people don't know that in today's transfer era. He has stayed at USC the entire time. He's been with Lincoln Riley's system the entire time. With LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, who has been there for a while, but he is now taking on a new system. On the defensive side, LSU is certainly more talented. Both teams had their defensive staffs revamped as the previous coaches put them in horrible positions, but LSU has some true NFL guys, especially with Harold Perkins Jr. On their defense. So the thought of an immediate coach coming in and being able to change things, it'll be a bit better, I think, on the LSU side than on the USC side. USC, I think, made the better hire, D'Anton Lynn out of UCLA. A lot of people don't know this. UCLA had one of the best defenses in the country last year, and LSU brought in the Missouri defensive coordinator. Name escapes me right now, but Missouri was good. It wasn't like they were world beaters on defense. So ultimately, I think Lynn is the better hire, but immediately the talent to work with is favoring the LSU side. And if you have talent to work with, if you get a better system, I think you'll notice, tick up pretty quick. What we're really looking at, though, is this number. It was all the way at LSU as 6.5-point favorites. It's down to 4.5, and it's trending. There's some sites now that have come down to 4, and it's trending that it's going to keep going down. And the reason that it's trending that way is you have a lot of sharps and a lot of people starting to realize that there really isn't any reason that LSU should be favored by that much outside of team bias, SEC bias, and just the overall perception of USC and Lincoln Riley right now. But when you look at it from points per game standpoint, what the overall talent composite is, where the teams are weak and strong, how Brian Kelly tends to do in opening games, how Lincoln Riley tends to do in opening games, the 4.5 is quite high. And that's why we're going to be taking USC plus 4.5 for 4 units tonight. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this one. The Modelo kickoff game in Las Vegas. It's going to be a very fast track. That's one of the faster fields that a college football game would be played on. And we think that that's going to favor USC, which should be the faster team tonight versus LSU. It absolutely favored Washington against Oregon last year in the Pac-12 championship game, which they ultimately were the faster team, which surprised a lot of people, but they were the faster team that Oregon was last year. I think you'll see Lincoln Riley's system work pretty good early on. He's one of the best first 15, first 20, first 25 play script callers in college football. Miller Moss, while being different than Caleb Williams, he's not going to give you the same wow plays, but there's something to be said about his ability to throw from the pocket and keep the play on script versus going off script. I think the talent at wide receiver is actually going to be better this year than it was last year, which was one of the big drop-offs you saw from Caleb Williams' first year to his second year. He did not have the same people catching passes, and I think that's going to be pretty strong for USC. USC offensive line will be solid. On defense, lots of question marks, and that's really what you have at LSU as well. I think Nussmeier is going to be a good quarterback for them. I think that everyone's making way too much out of what they lost at wide receiver. It's LSU. They recruit out of Louisiana. They always have good wide receivers. They will put another wide receiver in the NFL right after this year. They do year after year after year. Their offensive line versus USC's defensive line is the biggest mismatch in the game. LSU is going to have a top offensive line, but again, on defense, that secondary defensive line, it's one of those things where they're going to have to come out and prove it before we really start to believe that LSU has made a change on defense. And that's kind of the difference in this game is I don't think anyone's really expecting USC to have much of a change on defense. There's a lot of people that are really expecting a step up for LSU on defense this year. And while I believe that the new system they brought in will help, and I believe that there's talent there, I want to see that one before we put our money where our mouth is, as we'd say. So again, USC tonight plus the 4.5. Shop around. I don't think you can get a 5 anymore, but make sure you get the 4.5 and not the 4 or some. I actually think some are even coming down to 3.5, and there's a chance that gets to 3 by kickoff. So have fun with it tonight. Hope you guys had a good first Saturday college football. And then again, we will be here tomorrow to look at that Florida State-Boston College game, leaning a certain way now, but want to see that line continues to move, want to see how it continues to progress and move over today, tonight, and then into tomorrow. Disclaimer for you guys, I will be at the Michigan-Texas game next weekend, so we'll see if we can get a video up before the game. It's a noon kickoff, driving to Ann Arbor from Detroit, so we're going to have to leave pretty early to get there. Want to take part in some tailgate festivities. So possibly tomorrow, Saturday, will be just a post on YouTube and not a video, but I'll try and make a video if possible. If not, then we'll hit you guys with a post. But next Saturday is a much smaller slate in terms of games that we would have action on. So if it is going to be a video, it'll be a quick one. But everyone have a good rest of the Sunday, and we'll get back at you again later. And again, please, if you're following along with Bald Father, if you're betting with us, if you're winning with us, just give us a subscribe, a like, comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know where you think we're off, where you think we're on, what your thoughts are, what your picks are. Really want to get some engagement, and I'll always respond to comments as well. Thanks, guys.